Originalism has become kind of like the dominant strain of legal thought on the right for, the past 30, 40 years now. The Federalist Society was founded in 1982. The kind of like the leading lights back when it was founded, people like Antonin Scalia, the late Judge Bob Bork, Attorney General Ed Meese. The first strand of originalism, those kind of luminaries, were all politically conservative figures, but their approach to jurisprudence was very heavy on judicial restraint. Because at the time and place, you got to remember here, was a direct response to the excesses of the Warren Court, of the Burger Court, Roe versus Wade, the criminal procedure cases, Miranda versus Arizona. It's like your Miranda rights, all this nonsense, basically. So it was a heavy emphasis on judicial restraint. And to that end, what they emphasized was what we would call legal positivism. They basically said that the Constitution is a strict rule of law. There's no kind of moral, natural law, anything like that kind of undergird here. Scalia famously battled with Harry Jaffa of the Claremont Institute about the role that the Declaration plays or does not play in constitutional interpretation. It was strictly amoral. That was kind of the first strand of originalist thought. We eventually kind of get two more strands that develop over the next 15, 20 years or so. One is what we might call libertarian or classical liberal originalism. Professor Randy Barnett of Georgetown is kind of affiliated with this. My old professor, Richard Epstein, is very much affiliated with this. And it's kind of encapsulated by a subtitle from one of Randy's books where he calls it the presumption of liberty, which basically says that when we're in what originalists call, a quick aside, like the construction zone, it's a nerdy term, but it literally means when it's like ambiguous, you err on the side of presuming liberty. And then, of course, there's this newest strand that's a little bit of an oxymoron. They call it progressive originalism, which basically means that the original meaning is supposed to be elastic and to delegate to future generations to kind of update their morals. Okay, so those are kind of like the three strands of originalist thought for the past 35, 40 years. So I look at that as conservative and I say, where is the actual substantive conservative strand of thought? The first one, again, did a lot. That's kind of the Scalia school. But it's avowedly positivist. It is dedicated to the proposition the Constitution is not a moral document at all. There are no kind of substantive conservative values in there. By contrast, the latter two, the libertarian position with the whole presumption of liberty, is intrinsically oriented towards individual liberty. And progressive originalism, by definition, is progressive, right? So what I'm trying to do with this thing that I call common good originalism is trying to introduce what I view as kind of a genuinely, intrinsically, and substantively strand of originalist thought. It is still methodologically originalist, so not to get too much in the weeds, but it's a little different than Adrian Vermeule's, for example. Adrian's a good friend of mine. We talk all the time, but it's a little different as far as how it actually, the mechanics of it work. It's really much closer to kind of the Hamiltonian vision. It's really kind of more about kind of the nationalist, common good, health of the whole, in contrast to individual liberty maximization, which is why I'm good friends with guys like you, because I think we agree on this stuff.
That's right. And, the Hamiltonian vision that you mentioned, I think, is specifically valid because, to me, the Constitution has to be considered in the context of what caused it to come into being, which was the failures of the Articles of Confederation.
Exactly.
The absence in that previous system of the ability for a strong and cohesive national government to actually govern. So this seems pretty self-evident to me. Why do you get pushback, and from whom do you get pushback on the common good originalism question?
So it's really funny, right? Look, I have a lot of friends at the Federalist Society. I'm a Federalist Society speaker. I was a 3-year board member at the University of Chicago Law School. I do not disparage anyone or anyone who's affiliated with that organization. But what I will say is that I think it's quite telling that the logo of the Federalist Society is a silhouette of James Madison. And Madison was obviously one of the most brilliant statesmen. But even if even holding Hamilton aside, just sticking with James Madison for a second, this is a thing that our friend Matt Peterson at Claremont is a point he makes all the time. You can go to Madison's most famous Federalist paper, Federalist number 10. That's his famous discussion of faction and counter-majoritarianism and all that stuff. He uses the term public good, I think like 6 times in that very short essay. And then the common good is also used one additional time on top of public good. So this notion, this strand of thought that like individual liberty maximization was kind of like the be-all, end-all of founding era thought, even kind of holding aside Hamilton, the Federalist, it was just simply not the case. I mean, it's really kind of just like an ahistorical, anachronistic view of just Jeffersonian utopianism, frankly, is what it is. So I don't really know where this started, but really what I'm trying to do is just resuscitate this kind of this Hamiltonian train of thought. The pushback, to more directly answer your question, comes really, I think, from Libertarian Inc. It is from like these strands of the modern conservative movement that from my perspective, just become like overly liberalized, right? I mean, my friend Delia Shapiro, we've debated this publicly in Cato Universe, obviously. A lot of the folks affiliated with George Mason, Anthony Scalia School of Law, again, some of these people are personal friends, but they come from like a more kind of like Koch brothers-esque libertarian perspective. That is where the pushback is, because I'm basically saying that we've erred too much on the side of liberty, but there are other substantive values that it's time to kind of countervail with now.